Good Monday morning to you. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion. Let's go back to last week real quick. We finished out the week with the Dow actually accelerating to the upside early, only to fade into the afternoon, but did recover and got back into the green, very, very small, up about 13 points by the end of the day. But again, the constriction of the movement is something that we have talked about and we're continuing to talk about. And that's what's affecting the volatility. As a matter of fact, you look at the volatility index, we were in the 15s on Friday and actually set new 52-week lows again this past week on Friday. We hit down towards 1515. Now, the NASDAQ, on the other hand, held on to 14,000, which is pretty impressive. All day long, it was in a very tight range. It did have a nice acceleration towards the end of the day to finish up about 50 points. And what was really behind that? Well, technology certainly helping out there. We did see some financials that were actually trading pretty well, but what was really weighing on the markets themselves, actually healthcare. And healthcare was down not barely, just under about 1%, but nonetheless, that seemed to be what the anchor was of pulling the markets back down just that little bit that we were seeing started at that midday. Now, Bitcoin still was holding very, very tight. It was right around that 37,000 level, but the most interesting thing for me was the fact that our volumes just continue to be outrageously high. 42 million contracts on Friday. I think that was the third 40 plus million contract day that we did have last week. So again, volumes are there. This is summertime. Normally you don't see that type of thing. Last year with the pandemic, you could understand everybody's at home. There was some fear factor and everything else. Now that we have been reopening, we're still seeing those volumes being very, very sticky. So that's pretty interesting, I think. Take a look at what was leading the volumes. It wasn't Tesla. It was not Apple. Again, AMC, nearly 2 million contracts for AMC. AMC continues to be one of those leaderships of whatever you want to call them. John, I know, has been calling them the rebel names. So maybe that's what they are. They're not memes. These are rebels. These are rebels that are fighting against the big hedge funds and winning in many cases. So we take a look over at AMC. That's been something that's been actually accelerating once again to the upside. But we had four different stocks. We had Tesla, Apple, and NIO, all of which, along with AMC, over 1 million contracts. So very, very nice to see some of that volume, and obviously the 42 plus million. If you don't understand anything about the derivatives markets, I would encourage you to have some sort of an education. You can read about it, you can learn about it, you can get it from the guys here at Market Rebellion, however you want to do it. But it has been an area of growth, continues to be an area of growth. And again, you've heard me talk about this time and time again, the monstrous volumes that we have been seeing now for the past, call it about 20 months or thereabouts, something like that, with this acceleration that we're even seeing now. So the NASDAQ leaders, we said the NASDAQ finished up about 50 points. What was really some of the leadership there? Peloton again, and a lot of those stay-at-home stocks actually were what was really pumping this market to the upside late. So you look at Peloton up about 6+%. Then you look over at Zoom, also another one of those names. We talk about the stay-at-home names. These all seem to fall into that category. DocuSign, Okta. We did even have some nice movement again out of NVIDIA. So really, really a very impressive day for a lot of those different parts of the market. So coming into today, the Fed's looming. Everybody's talking about that. And the markets in the pre-market were very, very flat. You look over at the Dow, up or down, call it 10 points. You look over at the NASDAQ, actually up a little bit more than that, up about 30 points or thereabouts. S&P, call it flat. It was up or down 2 points. You get into the open and suddenly the market has a little bit of pressure on it, down about 50 points. Get a little further into the day, down about 80 points. Around 9 o'clock, we started to see, or 10 o'clock Eastern time, we started to see the market also still under even more pressure, down about 140 points. That's about where we found ourselves right now. Last I looked, we were down about 150 points. We don't need to check on that right now, but we're seeing the NASDAQ also holding on to some of the gains that they had. NASDAQ was up about 20 or 30 points early, holding on to that. I just took a quick brief look, up about 15 points right now. So definitely off some of the highs of the morning, which weren't that much higher than we are right now, but up about 40 points. We've slipped a little bit off that. Volatility immediately pumped into the markets once again. Here we find ourselves somewhere in the 16s, call it, in terms of the volatility index. Crude, that is the story of the day. Everybody's talking about inflation. We've been talking about that for a really long period of time, of course. But the leadership of that and the one that's right in our face each and every day. How many days have people, I'll get asked a serious question. Have you really looked at lumber prices? I know that we talk about it. We know the acceleration and the move there. We know it in iron ore. We know it in copper. We know it in a lot of these various names. But the one that's always right in our face is crude. So you take a look at crude. I talked about 70s. Now today, 71.5. Again, that movement to the upside that we have been seeing that started way back in November. Don't listen to all these guys who suddenly say, well, you know, this crude's starting to move a little bit here now. It's been moving. It continues to move. And there seems to be a little bit more of a want to see this thing go a little bit higher than it is right now. We'll see how this plays out. But this has been a move that's been going for quite some time. Look over at the 10-year, still hovering right around that 1.5% area. Bitcoin, though, is a different story. We talked about it's been in a tight range, been hanging right around that 36,000, 37,000. Well, it's up and above 40,000 today. So a nice solid move to the upside from Bitcoin, really, and could be attributed to a lot of different things. Maybe it's Elon Musk, whatever the case may be, but that certainly has been a huge story. We've talked about biotech on many occasions. Biotech having a pretty decent start to today, at least. Energy, a very nice start to the day. It was up about 1% early on. Consumer staples and materials, those were the ones that started off the day under a little bit of pressure. Last I looked, materials was leading to the downside. That was down about 1% on that pullback. But let's focus just for one last second on oil. And when we talk about oil, we talk about specific stocks in the energy space. Let's take a look at the XOP. Certainly, that's a name that we've talked about hitting new highs. It's not at new highs now today, but it's been hitting new highs last week. A nice move to the upside. That is the category where I've been calling it the beta names, all these beta type stocks that are absolutely moving with an accelerated movement. Now, again, it's up and it's down, but you take a look at the price of oil, you know exactly what that path has been, lower left to the upper right. So in other words, that's been an incredible story from 36 all the way up now towards 71.5. And now you take a look over at many of these names. Occidental, you look at Diamondback, which is FANG, you look at Marathon Petroleum, One Oak, take a look at Apache, take a look at Valero, all of these names with some very, very nice option activity. Actually, even last Friday, we were seeing time and time again, many of those types of names in that beta space, seeing some unusual option activity to the upside. So they don't seem to think that it's over just yet. And obviously with this move from 70 and now today, 71.5, we're seeing a nice acceleration to the upside. I got two unusuals and we're going to get out of here. RIOT blockchain, number one, RIOT, RIOT. So at 35.70, we had some pretty significant buyers in here, 9,400 of the June 40 calls. Now, obviously, we're talking very, very short term in terms of the expiration. Those are going for about 40 cents all the way up, just about 90 cents for those options. Again, the stock price, I always want to reference this so you know. So if things have moved too much, you have an understanding. But the stock was trading right around 35.70 at the time of that buy. Two, I've got Tesla. Now, Tesla is certainly an interesting one because we've bounced off of those numbers last week. We were looking 570s and in that sort of a range. We've been accelerated the upside today. Stock was trading 621.75. We had a buyer of 13,000. This is a big trade, guys. 13,000 of the June 620 calls. So call it the at the monies, right where the stock is trading. That's where they're attacking. They're trying to get some of that movement, some of that delta in those options. Those were going from $9, and by the time they got done buying them, they paid all the way up to $17. So very expensive options, a very expensive trade, a lot of money put out there. 13,000 multiplied by, call it in the middle, about $13 or $14 for those calls. That's a very expensive trade. Somebody putting a lot of money into that trade, expecting to see some movement to the upside out of Tesla. Folks, have a great day of trading. Hope you're very, very disciplined during the day. And if you're not educated in the derivatives markets, please do so. You really want to know where that activity is. And by the way, we are seeing a lot of those rebel stocks starting to take off as well again today, and a lot of unusual option activity in many of those rebel stocks as well. Folks, have a great day of trading.